Good morning, everyone. It's Tuesday, June 28th. The time is 9:30 a.m. And Erica, can you do the roll call?
Commissioner Tedesco?
Here.
Commissioner Pinter?
Here.
Commissioner Odoricio?
Here.
Commissioner Baca?
Here. Okay, if we can please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Good morning, everyone. It's the last meeting of June. It's shocking. We're just galloping right through 2022. If I can have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Commissioner Baca,
Yes.
did you want to make one adjustment to the agenda before you approve it?
Oh, yes. Do you want to do that language? I'm so sorry.
No
Heidi.
worries. I believe that we want to remove item AB from consent to be discussed at a future date.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, so if I made the motion, can I say approve the agenda with the exception of item AB? A is an apple, B is a bear. So it's 6AB.
Second.
Great, thank you, Heidi. I appreciate that. We don't have any awards and presentations this morning, so we're on to item 5, which is public comment. Erica, do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
We do have a few people signed up today. I'm
Okay.
not sure if they're general comments or regarding land use today.
Okay, you want to call them up?
Sure.
And we'll
The
find
first
out.
person is Kathy Moore.
It's me again. Okay, here we go. I thought about what I said a couple weeks ago about not needing a Women's Month or an Asian American Month, and I still feel that way. I don't think they're necessary, but I'm pretty sure I'm not going to talk you guys out of them. So, since you just created Immigrant and Refugee Month at the last meeting, June 14th, I thought I would suggest a couple of months I would like to see celebrated. I think July should be officially designated as Constitution Month. We can talk about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and other original founding documents all month long. And this is a pet peeve of mine. For too many people, it has become the 4th of July with picnics and fireworks. And that's how many people look at it. But really, it's Independence Day, and we should think about the Constitution and how a group of colonies and ragtag militia beat the greatest army in the world to become our own country. We should think about and teach the brilliance of our Constitution and founding documents. And this is another pet peeve of mine. I also think November should be officially designated as Veterans and Fallen Heroes Month. For too many people, Memorial Day is a 3-day weekend at the beach, the official kickoff of summer. But really, it is a sacred day of remembrance. I was speaking with an 86-year-old veteran friend of mine yesterday, and he said people should be going to ceremonies and remembering those who have made the ultimate sacrifice instead of celebrating at a picnic. He said, "It's not a day you celebrate, Kathy. It's a day you remember. And without them, you would not have freedom." So let's honor and talk about the veterans and heroes all during November and remember that we would not have our freedom without their sacrifice. Finally, the crosswalk at the west entrance is in desperate need of fresh paint. Why didn't you paint that one red, white, and blue for all of us Americans, and especially to honor those who served, a visual reminder that freedom is not free? I think all of this is doable since you just created an Immigrants and Refugees Month at the last meeting. So I urge you to create a Constitution Month in July, a Veterans and Fallen Heroes Month in November, and to paint the crosswalk at the west entrance red, white, and blue. You know, when I was growing up, I thought Asian girls were really pretty and I always wanted to look like them. But you can't change your race. You can choose whether or not to be brave and selfless. I am grateful to those men and women, and they deserve a whole month. Thank you so much.
Erica?
I believe the next two, Carmen and Keith, are here for 6820 York Street, which is a land use case today. Did
Okay.
you want to wait for those later?
Yes.
Okay. The next person is Mark Madison, and I'm unclear on the topic.
Okay. If Mark is in the room, yeah, come on,
I'm waiting for the 64th and Lowell project.
for the land use. Okay.
Yeah, we will.
Thank you, Mr. Madison.
That was everyone.
Okay, thank you, Erica. Do we have any elected officials' communications today? Commissioner Pinter.
Yeah, a couple of things. Several of us had the privilege of being over yesterday at the district attorney's office to celebrate with our DA, Brian Mason, the recipient or the receipt of $2 million to support domestic violence and intimate partner violence in Adams County and Broomfield County to support the work of the district attorney, but also to support the work of our human services team, because most of the grant will cover additional staff with Services de la Raza, Family Tree, and Colorado Legal Services to support those who have suffered intimate partner violence in our community. And several of us were there, and I just have to give compliments to our team, particularly our human services team, who has been diligently staffing this and working with our nonprofit partners to bring alongside the services necessary for those facing intimate partner violence, because it's more than just a criminal case. Often financial lives and personal lives are decimated as well as folks try to right their own personal ship and get back on shore footing. So I just want to give thanks to our team who's been supporting the district attorney in this high-risk assessment effort, as well as the members of law enforcement who were there, who are forming this collaborative, cross-jurisdictional, cross-disciplinary team to support victims when they come forward and have been facing intimate partner violence. It was really an inspirational morning. Though the topics were hard, everyone worked really diligently together. And I greatly appreciate all of those efforts.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other commissioners? I would just like to take a point of personal privilege. I think that it is important from this seat to just make mention of the historic change that faced our nation on Friday. No matter where you stand on the issue, I will stand with women. I stand with women's rights. It's just been a very, very difficult time, I think, for our country. We are at a crossroads. Today is primary election day, and I would encourage all of our residents and citizens to vote. We have numerous ballot boxes around the county. Those can be located on our website if you need a location of where you need to drop off your ballot. So thank you. Next item on our agenda is the consent calendar. Just need a motion to approve the consent with that one change.
Move to approve with the removal of item 6AB.
And the motion passes. Next item, we have quite a few items under new business, so County Manager Alicia Reese.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. The first item on your agenda is a resolution authorizing supplemental appropriations to the 2022 Adams County government budget, and Senior Budget Analyst Pernell Olson will present this item.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Pernell Olson, Senior Budget Analyst for Adams County. Before you is a proposed resolution authorizing the second amendment to the 2022 Adams County budget. This budget amendment was discussed in public study session on Tuesday, June 14th, 2022. In accordance with state statute, and so residents have the opportunity for public comment and input, notice of this public hearing was published in the North Glen Thornton Sentinel on June 23rd, 2022. The proposed resolution is authorizing total budget appropriations in the amount of $13,300,566, broken out as follows. General Fund, $8,430,722. Social Services Fund, $78,000. Colorado Air and Spaceport Fund, $4,791,844. Could I answer any questions for you regarding the Second Amendment?
Thank you for your presentation. Any questions from the commissioners?
None from me, but I move to approve as presented.
Second.
And the motion passes. Thank you, Noel.
Thank you.
Thanks. Our next item is a resolution approving an incentive agreement between Adams County and Prosper and Company LLC, and our Community and Economic Development Director, Jenny Hall, will present this item.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Incentive agreements are not often on the new business calendar, but we felt that the agreement with the county and the city of North Glen and Prost Brewing was such a wonderful one that we wanted to take this opportunity to highlight it for you and for the public. I have with me this morning Ryan Nolte, Deputy Director, as well as Debbie Tuttle, the Director of North Glen Economic Development, to talk a little bit about the highlights of this wonderful partnership.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ryan Nolte, Deputy Director, Community and Economic Development. As the Director mentioned, we are here today for a incentive agreement between Adams County and Prost Brewing. This actually mirrors an incentive agreement with North Glen as well. Just wanted to give you a little highlight on the incentive package itself, as is in your packet. It is a 10-year personal property tax rebate, not to exceed a total value of $706,000 and $1,634, excuse me. The biggest thing we wanted to highlight is actually Prost Brewing is currently headquartered in Denver and has outgrown the current space they have there at 19th in the Highlands area, and they are actually moving to the North Glen marketplace. This is actually to allow them to have a larger facility and also handle the manufacturing growth they've forecast to be headquartered here in the Adams County area. It will be a 60,000 square foot facility, will actually serve as their headquarters and forever home, as they've said, for all of their brewing, bottling, distribution activities, as well as the largest beer garden that the company will have. The beer garden alone is expected to attract about 350,000 visitors annually, so that will be a big catalytic project, not just for the North Glen marketplace, but for North Glen as a whole. Just on the numbers, the project is actually bringing about $25 million of capital investment and will be creating 33 full-time jobs with an annual wage of about $72,000. They will also be creating 56 part-time or service worker jobs, which will be paying a living wage of $25 to $30 an hour, as well as also kind of ownership benefits and others that Prost kind of prides itself on having. And then the thing that actually got us most excited, not just because it's a massive brewery facility, but also that the entire facility is actually going to be state-of-the-art, emphasizing a commitment to sustainability and utilizing a full CO2 recapture and wastewater treatment system on site. So they will be minimizing the impact they have while still creating the product that they want to be able to ship out of the area. So as we mentioned, Adams County did partner with the city of North Glen on this project, and we are very happy with the partnership we were able to have, and are honored actually that Debbie Tuttle from North Glen was here today to be able to talk a little bit about this. So I will actually pass to Debbie to speak on behalf of North Glen. Thank you very much, Commissioners.
Good morning, Board of County Commissioners. Boy, today is an exciting day for us, I'll tell you, not only for Adams County, but especially for the city of North Glen. Many of you know the marketplace has been around for about 20 years. Definitely needed redevelopment. I won't go into all the stories, but it's just been sold and bought and sold and bought, and so it's been a challenge. But this project with Prost Brewery is going to be, as Ryan said, catalytic to that project. They will be the anchor tenant, and they will be on the north side of the mall, as we call it, where Bed Bath & Beyond used to be. There'll be 60,000 square feet of manufacturing production facility, as well as the largest beer garden, so they'll have 10,000 square feet of outdoor space and about 25,000 square feet of indoor space for the beer garden. As Ryan mentioned, they're going to be investing $25.6 million in their large-scale brewery and beer garden. The project is truly a game changer for the North Glen marketplace and for Adams County. With Prost as the anchor tenant, it will transform the shopping center and create a destination location, as Ryan said, for over 350,000 people annually. Right now, if you've been over to the marketplace, there's definitely not a lot of traffic over there, so we know this is going to be the game changer. North Glen facility will serve as Prost's corporate headquarters, their regional production facility, their distribution center, and their largest beer garden. First, I would like to say David DeLine, president of Prost Brewery, wanted to be here today, but he was unable to because of travel plans, so he wanted me to apologize for not being here, but to really thank you for partnering with Prost and with Northglenn. Last night, the City Council for Northglenn passed an incentive as well. And so we did an STIP, as many of you are familiar with that, which is a sales tax share back. Again, performance-based. And we are so pleased that the county is a partner on this project. I think the exciting thing on this is, I know Ryan had talked about the employees, but initially that's where it's going to be. At full production within 5 years, they plan on hiring 200 people. And again, way above the average wage for Adams County and Northglenn. The facility will get national recognition as the most sustainable and technologically advanced breweries in the country. Now think about that, in the country. At full production, Prost will be the 5th largest craft brewer in the state. And I think this is really important, as Ryan was indicating, the sustainability piece and what they're putting in there. All their equipment is actually being shipped in from Germany. Germany has the technology. There's no other brewer in the United States that has the technology that they're going to be using. So this is really important for Adams County and Northglenn. Through the collaboration of Adams County, the Colorado Office of Economic Development and International Trade, the City of Northglenn, and the marketplace property owners, we were able to fill a $6 million financial gap on this project. The Prost deal is a great example of how bringing everybody together, teamwork, strategically rolling up our sleeves, and positively impacting this project. I always say that it takes a village to get deals done, and we are so grateful to Adams County for partnering with us on this project. We couldn't have gotten to the finish line without your support, so thank you very much. Also, I'd like to extend a special thank you to Jenny Grafton and Ryan Nolte for their assistance in helping to facilitate this county incentive. There was lots of ups, downs, stops, forwards, and they were so patient, and they were always there to support us. So again, thank you very much for your support. We couldn't have done it without you. Also, I'd like to extend a special thank you from our Northglenn City Council that wants to thank you to help make this project a reality. It's an incredibly important project for the City of Northglenn. We'll be sending out a VIP invitation to the Prost welcome event on July 27th, and hope you'll be able to attend. A press release will go out with the governor's press release today at noon. So you'll start seeing it, hopefully, in all the media. And again, thank you very much for your support.
Thank you so much, Debbie.
Any questions?
Questions from the board?
I don't have any questions. I just have thanks and congratulations. My husband spent a little over 5 years just recently. He switched jobs about 2 months ago with a German company, going back and forth to Germany, and I received a lot of feedback on Colorado beers versus German beers. So I know that my husband in particular will be very excited. We're all excited about the jobs and the economic development and the cultural attraction as well. And it's really nice to see this coming in to what is a crown jewel property in the Northglenn area. Certainly close to my home. I'm not sad about that. Thank you for the effort. Thank you for the commitment to getting good jobs in our community and economic development. I'm excited to see it. We'll look at our calendars to see if we can celebrate with you, and we look forward to celebrating with you. That'll be great. And maybe we'll, not quite in time to raise a glass to freedom on July 4th, but maybe next year we will.
Yeah, actually, I didn't mention this, but their goal is to have it open July of 2023, everything.
Next year, next 4th of July.
Next year, 2023, yeah.
Fantastic. Commissioner Doricio.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm going to support this, and I'm willing to make the motion too if there's no other discussion. Thank you very much for your work. We look forward to bringing in this new employer and more investments into the community. Economic development is important. It allows us to have conversations about how to pay for curbs and gutters and sidewalks and roads and bridges and affordable housing and all the other great things that we're doing. So thank you all very much for your work on this.
Thank you, Debbie. Anyone else?
Well, with that said, I move to approve as presented then.
Second.
Fantastic. Passes 4-0. Thank you, Debbie, for being here. Thanks,
Appreciate
Jenny.
it.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Our next item is a resolution approving Amendment 3 to the agreement between Adams County and Alfred Benesch and Company in the amount of $25,400 for engineering design services for replacement of the Calhoun Byers Bridge, and project engineer Mark McDonald will present this item.
Good morning, Commissioners. As stated, we have an agreement with Alfred Benesch and Company to provide professional engineering services for the design of the replacement of the Calhoun Byers Road Bridge over West Bijou Creek. As the final design and right-of-way acquisition work are both progressing towards completion, the project team recently received unexpected review comments from the U.S. Corps of Engineers, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, regarding our 404 permit for the waterway. The comments relate to recent changes in Corps approach and new requirements that cannot be anticipated in the original consultant proposal. Additional consulting work will be required to address the comments. The recommendation is to approve Amendment 3 to the agreement with Alfred Benesch and Company in the amount of $25,400 for a total agreement not to exceed amount of $341,073.
Thank you, Mark. Questions from the board? Seeing any?
No questions here. Move to approve as presented.
Second.
The motion passes 4-0. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Alicia.
The next item is a resolution approving Amendment 2 to the agreement between Adams County and Intervention Community Correction Services, Inc. in the amount of $9,744,253.25 for Community Correction Program Services. And Courtney Jursic will present this item and the next.
Hi. So this is just to approve a contract renewal. We're still under the 5-year master contract for community corrections. This is year 3. To approve the state allocation amount with both Core Civic and Intervention Community Correction Services for the next fiscal year. Both providers were approved by the Community Corrections Board.
Thank you, Courtney. Questions from commissioners?
I have a question.
Commissioner Dericio.
This is a renewal, so it didn't go out to bid, correct?
It did not.
Okay. This is year 3 of 5. I thought 3 was the max that we did, so that it's just in my head. I must have it wrong. What if we wanted to do a bid for competitive bid next year? What's the process? That's more of a question. I'm not sure if it's a question for you, the attorney, or the county manager.
Jen Tierney will address that question.
It's Amendment 2, so it's the 3rd year.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the contract. I didn't read it before I came down, but we can look at doing a 30-day cancellation if it indeed is a 5-year agreement, and we can put the services out for RFP again for next year.
And that would be an action of the board or direction from the board, probably at a different context, not at this moment, definitely after a discussion.
We can terminate for convenience. Our agreements do allow us to terminate for convenience with a 30-day notification.
Okay, got it.
Commissioner Dericio, I might be able to help a little bit here. I do believe that traditionally these community correction contracts have been for 5 years, but that does not preclude the board from asking us to go out to bid and look at a shorter term. But these contracts have been different than our typical purchasing contracts because they are essentially carry through contracts from the state.
Yeah, thank you for that, refreshing my recollection on that. I appreciate that. Okay, I'm going to support this and probably the next one today. It's a little reluctant. I'm concerned about the lack of competitiveness. I'm concerned about us being beholden just to a small amount of folks. But at this time, it's who we have and it's who we're working with. So those are just my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner. Others? I don't see any other. Can I clear you? I can't. There we go. Other comments than motion to approve from Commissioner Dericio?
Move to approve item number 4 for the comment statement.
And there's a second by Pinter.
Second.
The motion passes 4-0. So that was item 4, and then item 5, it's the same presentation? Okay.
Correct. And that is a resolution approving Amendment 2 between Adams County and Core Civic, Inc. in the amount of $9,744,253.25 for Community Correction Program services.
Madam Chair, if I might, unless there's more discussion, I'm going to move to approve with the same comments and commentary, I guess you would say, as before. I'm looking forward to some sort of discussion that we can have as a board about next steps for community corrections. But in the meantime, move to approve. Do we have a second?
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion passes 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Courtney.
The next item is a resolution approving an agreement between Adams County and WellPath LLC in the amount of $31,121,923 for inmate medical and mental health services at the Adams County Detention Center. And Sheriff's Office Division Chief Chris Laws will present this item.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning, Chief.
Chris Laws from the Adams County Sheriff's Office. The Adams County Detention Facility has the capacity to hold 1,726 inmates. Currently, we are at 965 inmates. Medical and mental health services are necessary for all of these inmates to include mental health and medical health and emergency care. So a formal request for proposal was posted on BidNet. Proposals were opened on April 5th, and these proposals were received. 3 proposals were received, and the proposals were evaluated on qualifications, staffing level, technical, and references, and their pricing. After a thorough analysis by the evaluation team, it was determined that WellPath was the most qualified proposer, providing the best value for Adams County. The yearly breakdown for the inmate medical and mental health agreement is as follows. First year is $10,047,595. Second year is $10,370,000, $210, excuse me, and then $10,704,118 for a total amount of $31,121,923. Is there any questions from the board?
Questions from the board. Commissioner Odricio.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you guys put this out and you did the process, and that's what it's there for. I will ask at the future, is there any reason we don't do this in-house? Is it?
Staffing and money?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just much easier to go out. Okay. I'm always going to have some concerns as we continue to move forward with private for-profit organizations. I'm going to ask that every time coming in front of us for when dealing with criminal justice matters. But I'm going to support this, and if there's no other discussion, I'd move to approve.
Other commissioners? Not seeing any.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next item is a resolution approving an agreement between Adams County and Custom Fence Company in the amount of $6,629,121 for a perimeter fence at the Colorado Air and Spaceport, and CAF's Director, Jeff Kloska, will present this item.
Hi, good morning, Commissioners. Jeff Kloska, Director of the Colorado Air and Spaceport, and I'm excited to be before you today to propose this resolution approving an agreement with Custom Fence for the perimeter fence project at the Colorado Air and Spaceport. So the Colorado Air and Spaceport requires this fencing to ensure the safety and security of both the general public and the traveling public utilizing the airport. The current lack of fencing has been a serious safety and economic concern over the lifetime of the Air and Spaceport, as there is currently nothing that stops wildlife, vehicles, and the general public from entering the air operations area. This project will install fencing around the entire airport perimeter with access control gates and security cameras. And this project is a serious safety and economic need for CASP, as we have received numerous feedback from many operators, including corporate operators and flight charter companies, as well as aerospace companies who've advised they would refuse to utilize the airport because their insurance companies will not insure their aircraft at an unfenced facility. A formal invitation for bid was posted on BidNet, and bids were opened on April of 2022. One bid was received from Custom Fence Company for $6,629,121. After a thorough review of this bid, it was determined that the Custom Fence Company met the bid requirements and is qualified to perform the scope of work, and the pricing was fair and within the market rate. The recommendation is to award the agreement with Custom Fence Company to provide the perimeter fence at the Colorado Air and Spaceport in the not-to-exceed amount of $6,629,121. And with that, I will entertain any questions.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Commissioner Tedesco.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to say you are the third director of the Front Range Airport / Colorado Air and Spaceport now that we have worked with to try to get this fencing out there. It's been top of mind for me for my entire career here. And I just want to congratulate you on finally getting this done. I think it'll bring more benefit to Adams County than we ever imagined. This is something that has kind of handicapped that Colorado Air and Spaceport from the very beginning, and we've lost a lot of opportunities over the years because of that. So I am extremely proud of the work that you have done, and I'm ecstatic about the possibilities moving forward out at the Colorado Air and Spaceport now. So thank you, thank the team, I know Jim Seilecki has worked a long time on this. Alicia Reese has worked a long time on this. Former county commissioners and our county manager have worked a long time on this. We're very proud of you and the work that you've done in being able to accomplish this. So again, thank you.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just had one question for you, Jeff. Can you just go over
Yes.
the funding source?
Yeah, so
for
so this year, $6 million has been allocated from the 2022 CIP county funded projects, and then the $629,121 will be a 2023 CIP item as the project will stretch into the 2023 CIP year.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Commissioner, for making a motion. That was Commissioner Tedesco. So second by Pinter.
Yeah, I'm happy to second this as well and echo the comments of my colleague. This is critical to us expanding the economic development opportunities. Again, like the item earlier in the agenda, it's jobs, bringing good jobs to the community and expanding our capacity to do economic development here. So I'm excited to see this work get done, and sounds like you're on it, and we will celebrate the fence line, which will be less exciting than the beer garden, but very important for economic development. So thank you.
The motion passes 4-0. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Last on new business today, Commissioners, is a resolution approving Amendment 1 to the agreement between Adams County and Southwestern Painting LLC in the amount of $550,000 for on-call painting services, and Facilities Operations Manager Eric Bryant will present this item.
Good morning, Commissioners. The Facilities and Fleet Management Department requires painting services in county buildings to maintain quality and appearance. In May 2021, the county entered into an agreement with Southwestern Painting to provide on-call painting services in all county buildings. The Facilities and Fleet Management Department is pleased with the on-call painting services provided by Southwestern and recommends an Amendment 1 to extend the agreement for one additional year in the not-to-exceed amount of $550,000 be approved. Any questions?
Questions from the board? Not seeing any, so
Approve as presented.
thank you, Commissioner.
Sorry, there is a question?
Yeah, what was that?
It's about fashion, sir.
Sorry, I was just asking where you got your Kyle Clark jacket.
I don't know, my wife got it.
He was making fun of a reporter, not you. Not you. Looks good.
You look fabulous. Also, I'm seconding the motion for approval.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great job.
The motion passes 4-0. That was funny. Okay, next item on the agenda, County Attorney, what do you have for us?
Good morning, Commissioners. I have two executive sessions on your agenda for today. One pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 246402-4B for the purpose of receiving legal advice regarding Board of Health formation.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, and the next item?
And the second is pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 246402-4B for the purpose of receiving legal advice regarding DIA marketing contract.
Move to approve. Oh, thank you.
Thank
Motion
you.
passed. Thanks, Heidi. Okay, time is 10:07. Next on our agenda is land use, so let's take a 10-minute break. We'll be back just after 10:15 to start the land use cases. Okay, if we can go ahead and get started here. Erica? What time is it? It's time. Okay, time is 10:20. Let's go ahead and begin our sessions on the land use hearings. So,
Yes, our
Alicia?
first item is for a continuance of a conditional use review at 4147 West 64th Avenue on rezoning.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is David Dubosky, and I'm here to present to you with the case RCU 2021-0037, 4147 West 64th Avenue rezoning. Oh, why isn't this not working? Oh, okay. And the request before you is a rezoning from residential 1A to residential 2. And we are asking for a continuance of this request to the July 19th, 2022 BOCC hearing. Planning Commission continued this case at the May 26th Planning Commission hearing, and it was heard on the June 23rd hearing last Thursday, and since then staff has not had enough time to go through the proper updates and just general administration to get ready for this hearing today.
okay.
So with that, thank you. And if you have any questions, I'm available for that.
So the request from staff is just continuance. So Heidi, from a procedure standpoint, you just need a motion from the board?
Yes, just vote to continue to July 19th.
July 19th, perfect. Okay.
You have your hand
Oh, Commissioner Pincher, my apologies.
That's all right, thank you. Chair, I just have a procedural question. Per my notes, I think we have about 3 folks signed up for public comment, and I know it's a hassle at a minimum to come in, probably during the workday to come testify and wait through all of our regular business for the land use. Is there something we can do to record their comments so that even though it's being continued?
Yes, we do have precedent for allowing public comment on cases even if they're being continued.
Okay, well, I defer to the chair, but I just wanted to flag that.
Thank you, Commissioner Pincher. Yes, if there's a prior precedent of hearing public comment or comments on this case, I say that we hear them since the residents have made an effort to come out. So, yeah.
They obviously can come back, but if they're here already.
Okay, so Erica?
I don't know if I have anybody on my list for this specific case.
Okay.
The 4 people I have signed up are not signed up for this case.
Okay, very good. Sounds good. So I just need a motion from the commissioners to continue this to a date specific of July 19th.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and the motion passes 4-0. Alicia?
Great, thanks. The next item is related to rezoning at 6820 York Street. And Alec Gleason will present this item.
Great. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Ella Gleason. I'm a planner with the Community and Economic Development Department. The case before you this morning is the 6820 York Street rezone, case RCU 2022-5, located at 6820 York Street. The request is for a rezoning from Agricultural 1 to Industrial 1, and the site is 2.67 acres in size. Here is an aerial view of the property. As you can see, it's located to the northeast of Highway 270 and to the west of Cat Lake. While it does have a York Street address, it does take access off of Columbine Street. Here's a closer view of the site. As you can see, it is currently developed with a single-family home. The current zoning is Agricultural 1. The purpose of this district is to provide a rural single-family dwelling district that provides for a rural experience. And again, the proposed zoning would be Industrial 1. The purpose of this district is to provide a general commercial and industrial zone district for limited industrial uses and a variety of warehousing and wholesale uses. As you can see, there's a mixture of zoning in the area. However, it's important to note that in the past 10 years, 3 of the properties in this area have also been rezoned from an agricultural to an industrial zone district. The future land use designation for the site is industrial. The purpose of this is to provide a setting for a wide range of employment uses, including manufacturing, warehousing, distribution, and other industries. Additionally, the Southwest Area Plan designates this as part of the North Washington Industrial Sub-Area. Both of these designations call for light industrial uses. When reviewing rezoning, there are 4 criteria of approval. The first, that it is consistent with the comprehensive plan, that it is consistent and complies with the development standards, and that it is harmonious and compatible with the surrounding area. Again, the comprehensive plan has designated this property with the future land use of industrial. The applicant is proposing to develop a truck and trailer rental business at this site, which would be in line with the future land use. This proposed use would also be in line with the proposed zone district and its purpose. Additionally, there are dimensional requirements for lots in each zone district. Staff has reviewed the request and has confirmed that the lot does meet all of these dimensional requirements listed here. Here's a proposed site plan provided by the applicant. As you can see, the existing single-family home is proposed to be converted into an office. There is a driveway leading to a parking lot where the rental vehicles would be stored. And you can see that the applicant has acknowledged that landscaping buffers would be provided to the north and the south to buffer this use from any single-family homes. Here is a picture of the site. So this is standing on Columbine, looking east, directly onto the site. This is looking north up Columbine. And this is south. And this is looking across to the west onto Highway 270. All property owners and occupants within 1,000 feet were notified. 66 notifications were sent. 0 comments were received. All applicable referral agencies were notified. None responded with concern. However, we did receive 3 comments that will be addressed at time of site development from Adams County Fire, Tri-County Health, and Denver Water. This case was heard at the May 26th hearing of the Planning Commission. It was approved unanimously, 5-0, with 4 findings of fact and 2 notes to the applicant. There was no public comment or concerns from the Planning Commission. So with that, staff would recommend approval of the subject request, RCU 2022-5, with 4 findings of fact and 2 notes to the applicant. Here are the findings of fact. And 2 notes. The first, that all mature trees on the property would be preserved to the maximum extent feasible. Secondly, Adams County will require building permit approval to establish the new use. These reviews will include, but are not limited to, landscaping, site design, parking, building safety, traffic, and drainage. And this concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions.
Terrific. Thank you, Ella. So questions from the board first. Any questions? Is the applicant present, and would you like to make a presentation? You want to come on down and state your name for the record?
Sorry, I'm Keith. I lost my voice over the weekend. 3-day music festival in Mac, Colorado.
Avalanche one, I mean, all kinds of excitement going on.
So I'm going to let Carmen talk.
Okay.
Good morning. We're a fairly new business in this particular business. We started in August of last year, so just under a year ago. And we're just extremely fortunate that business has been doing very well for us. This property acquisition began in October of last year. So it's been a really lengthy process for us, and a lot of thanks go out to very many people in particular Ella, who's the only one of our team here today, who's been kind and patient and knowledgeable and has given lots of advice and help along the way and guidance, and we really, really appreciate that. We're super excited that we're kind of coming in the home stretch of wrapping this up. We're thankful for the consideration of rezoning this property, allowing us to move our business location to where we can expand, where we can pursue the goals that we have set for the business, you know, help the economic development of that area, bring, you know, jobs to the area. We're not going to even try to compete with Prost. You know, 60,000 square feet, 200 employees is probably not in our future for this property, or maybe at all. But we're thankful for the opportunity to just to move locations and to kind of put our foot down and call this our new home.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah.
We have a process we need to go through. Hang on one second. So we have questions from the board. So I have Commissioner Odoricio up first.
Yeah. If we could you guys do the aerial map? That's fine. You guys are going to be very close to a set of other homes too. So I'm going to approve this I'm going to vote to approve this, and I am in support of this. It's compliant with the comprehensive plan. It's compliant with our standards. I think it sounds like you don't have any complaints from the neighbors at this point. I would just recommend that you go out and meet each and every one of them, talk to them, and proactively address any concerns that might come up with noise, dust, all those types of things as you run your business so close to homes. With that said, I will support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Tedesco.
I just have a couple questions, and I know you haven't done the site design yet, but what are you anticipating for the amount of parked vehicles on this property?
The amount of parked is about 50 right now.
So we're looking at about up to 50 vehicles, keeping in mind that they're not all going to be there all at one time. I mean, worst case scenario, you know, yes, there may be 50 vehicles, but, you know, we're in the rental business, so we're constantly changing over. Most of our contracts are longer term contracts, you know, monthly. We currently have 6 vehicles out there on a 6-month lease. So there's not going to be a ton of, it's not going to be, you know, 10 vehicles turning over on a daily basis. But we're anticipating that most of our vehicles are actually not going to be on site. They're going to come back for, you know, change outs and then be out again.
You can, you know, kind of like U-Haul properties, if you want to.
Yeah, so Keith is kind of using the example of U-Haul, you know, or Penske truck rentals. I mean, ideally, you know, your fleet's on the road and not sitting at home, not making money.
Yeah, and I'll just say I appreciate that. I will say that my experience with this board is they're not very fond of parked vehicles. There's been 2 other sites that have come forward with these exact proposals, varying in other ways and other uses. One very close to where this one is that were denied, and also one off of Federal and 70th that were denied. You know, it'll be interesting to see how this proceeds. Especially because you are so close to residential, especially because I know that the board, you know, voted the other 2 down for different reasons and for different uses, but it'll be interesting to see how this proceeds because the access or ingress and egress to this place is residential. It is, you know, near a highway and a storage, water storage. But you are surrounded by, you know, residential, so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, right? Can I just say that I support your business. I think you're in an appropriate location. I do have concerns of whether the neighborhood is going to accept it. You know, I think that they will. I would suggest that there be security fencing and other, you know, types of things like that, just to, you know, I think the other commissioners' comments of reaching out, absolutely, I do believe that you need to do that. I'll support it. I think it's a great use, and I think it's a good business, and I appreciate what you do.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Yeah, and Keith has already gone out and spoken with a few of the neighbors, and we have a couple of business acquaintances that are in that area as well. So Keith tends to go and make friends with everybody, so I'm sure as soon as we kind of move to the next step with that, meeting everybody and just checking in and saying, hey, if you have any problems, you know, here's our contact, let us know, you know, so we can.
And second to that, if you look at the proposed lot, it slopes down in the back. So I personally don't like vehicles sitting around either. I'm an eye appeal person. So we put all the parked vehicles way in the back. The front will be decorated and designed, of course. The land slopes, so from 270, you don't see the vehicles. You don't see any of that. You don't see it up from the front. It's a very minimal eye, you know, and that's why we did that.
I appreciate that. So I know it's a rent. Do you have anything else, Commissioner? Okay. I'm going to go next. Commissioner Doricio, and then I'll come back to you. I know you said it was mentioned it was a rental business. My biggest concern is if we have vehicles that are idling on the property. I think that's one of the biggest complaints that we get from residents that are close to I-1 is the air pollution, also the noise pollution. So I'm not anticipating for a rental business to have idling vehicles, but can you talk to that? And then also to talk about, are you planning to put any type of privacy fencing or any kind of screening between you and the neighbors?
Yes, on both sides, by the neighbors, we're putting trees, bushes to grow to do the privacy between. On the north side, as she spoke, I make friends. The gentleman, as you can see on the top right, that's a truck yard. He's a dump truck operator. He owns most of that whole line already himself and is about to go through this same process by the sound of it. The people on the south I have not had much communication with other than a few waves and a few highs, but pretty much everybody on the north I've already spoke to and are super excited about it. As for the idling vehicles, again, rental trucks in and out. We're not looking for them to be there. You know, no late hours. We're going to have hours of operation during normal business days, so there's not going to be late hours, you know, waking people up at night, leaving early in the morning, things like that. They will have to be there during business hours.
And also the landscaping requirements have been kind of a pet peeve of mine from day one. Everybody's really annoyed with me. But I started reading the 20-plus pages of the requirements, and I finally gave up. And I'm like, we need to hire a landscape architect because I don't even know. But so that's really been something that's important to me. Also, that big tree that's in front of the residence, if we can, you know, keep that because it's beautiful and they're just, you cannot replace those. And just making sure that it looks beautiful, that the property, when you come up to it, when you drive by, that it looks nice.
And I want one more thing, and I don't know, Ellie, if the pictures show it, but on the far right corner, there's this old building down there. And so the lady who owned this land, she lives in this house up in the top left, this greenhouse. She's the lady I'm purchasing the land from. And she's, don't quote me on this, but she's late 80s, early 90s. She's terminal. Sweetest lady. She's lived on this property her whole life. Her dad was a vegetable farmer. This little building down in the bottom is where her dad kept his tractors and fixed his tractors. My intent, full, because I love old stuff, and I mean, if you knew my life, I've got collectible stuff. But anyway, I'm going to restore that building. It's got these beautiful wrought iron folding doors on it. My plan is to decorate that end because you can see that from 270. They've got a whole bunch of their old tractor implements sporadically laying throughout the yard. I'm going to move them all down and zero-scape it and lay that all out. And that's what you're going to visually see from the end. That lady cried when I told her that, you know, that I'm going to keep, because she was like, that was one of the things she didn't want to sell the property. She didn't want that bulldozed down, but she knows it's not worth anything. But it is, I love it, and she loves it. And I didn't necessarily do it for her. I did it because I liked it, but now that she is so in love with, it just, anyway, so that's my intent on that end of the property, to beautify it from the Cat Lake side. And then just, I guess it's turning into a small memorial of her and her grandson. I think it's her grandson, but he's like my age, lives with her right now too. And he's also excited about the fact that we're doing that and using the implements that are on the property to put around that area as well. That's going to be the border in between the rental and Cat Lake.
Very good. Thank you, Keith. So we had one more question. Commissioner Mauricio?
Actually, you answered quite a few questions about engagement. Just from a staff perspective, I assume all of the notifications went out to all the residential folks absolutely near this facility?
Correct. So properties were notified within 1,000 feet to account for the Highway 270 right-of-way. So all of those were sent out. I believe there were 66, and we did not receive any comments.
Got it. Okay. And with that said, based on what we've heard about the outreach, based on, I think that in this neighborhood, this is, some people consider this South Welby, some consider it North Washington area, whatever you call it, the people will come out and they would let us know, I believe, if there was a problem here. So I think your plans on aesthetics, your plans on mitigating any sort of problems with the neighbors sound good to me, and I support this. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. So we don't have anything else for the applicant right now, so you can have a seat, and then
Thank you.
absolutely. Anyone from the public signed up, Erica, for this item?
It was the applicant that had signed up today. To
Oh, okay. Got it. I understand. No one else? Okay. Any further discussion by the board? If not, then we're ready to accept a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that RCU 2022-5, 6820 York Street rezone be approved with 4 findings of fact and 2 notes.
Thank you, Commissioner. And the motion passes 4-0. Thank you so much, Keith and Carmen. So next.
And the final case today is related to Clear Creek Valley, and planner Layla Bajalan will present this case.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Layla Bajalan. I'm with the Community and Economic Development Department. And the case before you is PRC 2021-2. This is Clear Creek Valley. And the address of the subject request is 6501 Lowell Boulevard. So within this case, there are 4 separate requests. The first request is for a rezone from Residential 1A and Commercial 4 to Planned Unit Development. The second is for a major subdivision preliminary plat to allow for 124 residential lots in 6 non-residential tracts. And associated with the preliminary plat, there's also a request for a waiver from the subdivision design standards to allow for private streets within the development. And then the final request is for a planned unit development, preliminary development plan that would allow for a duplex development along with associated open space and amenities within the development. So this image shows the location of the subject request. It's located at the northwest corner of West 64th Avenue and Lowell Boulevard. The Jim Baker Trail does run along the east side of the property, and then directly to the north, a little bit above where this image cuts off, would be Hidden Lake and then the Westminster RTD station. And surrounding properties are a mix of residential uses, and there are some greenhouses to the south. It's important to note that there have been 2 larger developments that have been approved in this area recently. The Baker School Apartments does appear to be under construction in this image, but it is for completely built out and is located directly to the east of the subject property. And then to the southeast of the subject property, you can see where Berkeley Shores has been recently approved in this area as well. So the current zoning on the property is residential 1A and commercial 4. It does have split zoning. The residential 1A zone district is similar to our residential 1C zone district and allows exclusively for single-family residences. And then our C4 zone district is one of our heavier commercial zone districts, and it allows for a range of commercial uses. And then surrounding properties are primarily a mix of residential zoning, so there is single-family zoning to the north and to the west. To the east, across Lowell Boulevard, it's primarily zoned as R2 or R3. Our R2 zone district is primarily where you will find duplexes within the county. And then our R3 zone district does allow for multifamily. Typically, you would see townhomes in R3 zoning. And again, there have been several PUDs that have been approved in this area as well. So the future land use designation on the subject property is urban residential, and the urban residential future land use allows for housing in units of one unit per acre or greater, and all surrounding properties do share the urban residential future land use. There is some parks and open space to the north that's associated with the Hidden Lake, and there's a Highland Hills Recreation District on this property as well. So in considering the first request for a rezone, the criteria of approval are that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan, that it's consistent with the development standards, that the request complies with the development standards, and that the request is harmonious and compatible to the surrounding area. So if approved, this is what the zoning map would look like. The property would change to a PUD zone district, and as you can see, it is not compatible with the surrounding properties, as there are several multifamily PUDs that have been approved in this area. And in addition, the R2 zone district is where you would find a duplex development within the county, and all properties to the east of the subject parcel along Lowell are primarily zoned as R2. And when considering a PUD, there is a 1 acre minimum, and staff has confirmed that this property does meet all dimensional standards, as the subject property is roughly 6.8 acres in size. So the second request is for a major subdivision preliminary plat to allow for 124 residential lots in 6 non-residential tracts. And the criteria for a major subdivision preliminary plat include conformance with the subdivision design standards, that the applicant has provided documentation that shows proof of adequate water supply and proof of adequate sewer service to service the subdivision, that any soil or topographical conditions have been identified, that there's adequate drainage infrastructure in place, that there's adequate public infrastructure, including curb, gutter, and sidewalk, that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and any applicable sub-area plans, that the request is consistent with the development standards, and finally, that the request is harmonious and compatible to the surrounding area. So associated with the preliminary plat, there is also a request for a waiver from the subdivision design standards to allow for private streets within this development. And the criteria for a waiver from the subdivision design standards include that there's an extraordinary hardship or practical difficulties that result from strict compliance with these standards and regulations, that the purpose of these standards and regulations are served to a greater extent by the alternative proposal, that it does not have the effect of nullifying the purpose of these standards and regulations. So the applicant is specifically requesting this for private streets within this development. Those streets would only serve the lots that are associated with this development, so there is no greater benefit to require the applicant to make these public streets, which Adams County would then maintain. So this image shows the proposed preliminary plat that shows 124 residential lots in 6 non-residential tracts. There are some tracts for open space as well as tracts for the private drive included, and this is the northern portion of the preliminary plat. This shows the middle portion of the preliminary plat with the access to Lowell Boulevard through West 65th Avenue, and there is a central tract in the middle portion of this that provides as a central open space courtyard for the development. And then finally, here's the southern end of the preliminary plat that shows some additional residential lots, and then there are some tracts for open space and detention on the southern end of this plat as well. So then the final request is for a preliminary development plan, and the criteria for approval when considering a preliminary development plan include compliance with the comprehensive plan, that the request is consistent with the development standards, that it's compatible or designed to mitigate externalities with the existing or allowed land uses that are adjacent to the proposed development, that the request is showing conformance to the Adams County Transportation Plan and will not have a detrimental impact on adjacent properties, that it's consistent with any applicable drainage plans within the area, that any unusual or unique circumstances are mitigated, that the request is showing consistency with any approved overall development plan if applicable, and that the request is harmonious and compatible with the surrounding area. So the preliminary development plan for a PUD would be the document that spells out the open space, the amenities, the housing types, as well as dimensional standards for the individual lots themselves, and it does also include uses that would be allowed. So for Clear Creek Valley, they're proposing 62 two-family dwellings, so 124 total units and lots for these residences, and they're proposing a max height of 40 feet. So the applicant does have 3 elevations they're proposing within this PUD that would range in height to provide some variety within this development. The max height is set at 40 feet, but not all buildings would be approaching 40 feet in height. In addition, the applicant is measuring height to the peak of the roof, whereas Adams County measures height to the mid-pitch of the roof. So on paper, these buildings will look a little bit taller than what is typically allowed in an Adams County zone district. And they're also proposing a max density of 18.2 units per acre. And when considering compatibility to the surrounding properties, it's important to consider what could be allowed in an Adams County zone district, as well as some developments that have been recently approved in this area. So our residential 1C or residential 1A zone district is exclusively single-family housing that could be approved in that zone district. Our residential 2 zone district does allow for single-family and two-family developments as a use by right. Our R3 zone district is a multifamily zone district that does allow for duplexes with an approved conditional use permit. And then our R4 zone district is also a multifamily zone district, and this is typically where you would find apartments in Adams County. Berkeley Shores has been recently approved to the southeast of the subject property, and it does have single-family homes as well as multifamily. There's attached townhomes with Berkeley Shores. And then Baker School Apartments was approved directly to the east of the subject property and is several apartment buildings. So this development does fall in line and is similar to our R3 zone district. Our R3 zone district allows for a max height of 35 feet and allows for 14 dwelling units per acre. So it is slightly more dense and slightly taller than you would see for an Adams County R2 zone district, but duplexes are allowed in R3 as well with a conditional use permit. So it does fall in line with our R3 zone district. Berkeley Shores was approved with a max height of 45 feet, and then Baker School Apartments was approved for 3 stories with a max height of 48 feet. And then when considering density, Berkeley Shores was approved for 9.2 dwelling units per acre. That number is a little bit skewed because Berkeley Shores does have the lake on their property, so if you're considering only the developable area, Berkeley Shores would be much more dense than the 9.2 dwelling units per acre. And then Baker School Apartments was approved for up to 32 dwelling units per acre. And then when looking at lot dimensions and setbacks, Clear Creek Valley is proposing a minimum lot size of 1,200 square feet, a minimum lot width of 24 feet, max lot coverage at 70%. And then for setbacks, the Clear Creek Valley is proposing a front setback of 8 feet with a 5-foot front porch being allowed to encroach in that, so a 3-foot setback to that front porch. A side setback of 3.5 feet, so these units would be 7 feet apart. And then a rear setback of 5 feet. So when looking at some of the Adams County zone districts, these lot sizes are a little bit smaller than what would be allowed in R2 or R3. But again, it is consistent with our R3 zone district in minimum lot width. And then when looking at Berkeley Shores, they were approved with an 880 square foot minimum lot size, so much smaller than the proposed development, and a much smaller minimum lot width because they were approved with 16 feet. This development is also consistent with Berkeley Shores and setbacks, which is allowed for a 10-foot front setback, a 3-foot side setback, and then an 8-foot rear setback as well. And these images were provided by the applicant that conceptually show what this development could look like if built out. This is the central courtyard that the applicant is proposing, and then these would be duplexes that would be 7 foot apart on the property. So with any PUD, there is a requirement for open space. Open space is required at 30% of the total acreage of the development. So this lot is 6.83 acres in size, which would require an open space of 2.05 acres. And of that open space, 25% is required to be active open space. So the requirement would be 0.51 acres. The applicant is meeting all of the open space requirements. And this image was provided by the applicant to demonstrate what some of their open space would consist of. So there is, in north would be on the right-hand side of the screen. So in the northwest corner, there is some open space with some bocce ball fields, and then there's the central courtyard that does have playgrounds, some picnic areas, some flex lawn space. And then in the southern portion of the development, there is the drainage pond. And then there's also some picnic tables that are accessible from the Jim Baker Trail, so the public could use them as well. The applicant is also proposing a connection to the neighborhood to the west that would allow those residents to have a more direct connection to the Jim Baker Trail. And then there is also a sidewalk that does run around the perimeter of this development and connects all the open space with the Jim Baker Trail and all of the units. And the applicant is proposing a detached sidewalk along West 64th Avenue to add to the aesthetics of this development as well. So this subject property is within the half-mile buffer of the Westminster Station. So if the Westminster Station would be in unincorporated Adams County, it would be considered for TOD. But our TOD zone district is only applicable to the half-mile buffer around the Federal Station and the Pecos Station. But this property is well connected to several local parks and also station areas throughout this larger vicinity. So it is within a mile of 2 other stations and a half mile within the Westminster Station. The Jim Baker Trail does run along the eastern side of the property and connects with Hidden Lake to the north. So when looking at parking proposed within this development, they are proposing 2 spaces per unit that are provided in an attached garage. The driveways cannot accommodate parking for this development, and they are proposing 0.29 visitor spaces that are primarily compact spaces, but also include standard and ADA spaces within this development. And then there will be no on-street parking allowed. The drive aisles do not accommodate for on-street parking, so the fire department has requested that no parking signs be placed in this development to prevent parking. So when looking at some of the Adams County requirements, our parking requirements are not by zone district, they are by housing type. So for a single-family residence, you are only required 2 spaces per unit and no visitor parking is required. For a 2-family dwelling, so for a duplex, 2 spaces are required. And then typically if it's zoned R2, the staff would not enforce visitor parking on an R2 zoned property. But if the case does go in front of the Planning Commission can require up to 1 space per 2 units of visitor parking for a duplex development. If this property was considered for TOD, for a TOD rezone, they would be a max of 2 spaces that they could provide, and no visitor parking is required, or typically would be allowed with a TOD rezone. So the applicant is providing visitor spaces and the minimum 2 spaces that would be required for a 2-family dwelling. Adjacent development, so Berkeley Shores was approved for 2 spaces per unit and 0.5 spaces per unit of visitor parking. And then the Baker School Apartments has roughly 1.6 spaces per unit, and they were actually approved with no requirement for visitor parking, but they did provide 15 spaces of visitor parking. So here are a couple images that look at the subject site. This is looking to the southwest onto the property. This is looking from the Jim Baker Trail. Again, surrounding properties are primarily single-family residential to the west. The property is currently vacant. There was a single-family home on the property, but due to fire damage, it has been recently demolished and removed from the property. Here are a couple more images looking the top left. This is looking to the north onto the property from the Jim Baker Trail. A lot of these single-family residences are 3 stories in height to the north of the subject property. The top right is looking across Lowell Boulevard at some of the R2 zone properties. As you can see, there are some townhomes that are going up in a recently approved R3 rezone in this area. The bottom left is looking to the south along the Jim Baker Trail. The Baker School Apartments are located in this image as well. And then the bottom right image is looking directly to the west across the property at some of these single-family homes that are approved there. The topography of this parcel, so the northern portion sits much higher than the southern portion, so it does slope downwards as you go to the south of the subject property. And then this image is looking at the Baker School Apartments, which is approved directly to the east of the subject parcel. Again, you can see 3 stories in height for a multifamily development within this area. So during the referral period, staff notified all property owners and occupants within 1,000 feet of the subject site. A total of 407 notifications were sent, and we received 7 public comments on this case. Of the public comment, 1 was in support, stating a need for housing in the area. 5 were in opposition, and 1 remained neutral but had some concerns. All concerns that were provided in the public comment were in regards to additional density in this area, traffic congestion, and then the pollution associated with the traffic. There was some concerns with water supply and sewer services for this development. And finally, there was a concern over foundation settling of adjacent housing. Staff believes this request would have no impact on the foundations of the adjacent housing. And in addition, the applicant has provided a will-serve letter from Crestview Water and Sanitation that demonstrates proof of adequate water supply and sewer services, and the Division of Water Resources has signed off, noting that Crestview through Denver Water is a reliable source to provide water to this development. We also notified several referral agencies throughout this process, and initially Adams County Fire and Rescue had some concerns over the drive aisles and then turnaround for their vehicles. The applicant has worked with Adams County Fire and Rescue to provide adequate turnaround and drive aisle widths for fire trucks. The Division of Water Resources had some initial concerns as they believe that there was a water well on this property that would need to be capped in accordance with their regulations. The applicant has provided documentation showing that there is not a water well on this property, so the Division of Water Resources has provided a no comment letter. Tri-County Health Department had some initial concerns on the demolition of the building because there was some fire damage. The applicant has removed the building in accordance with CDPHE requirements. And then the Adams County Sheriff Department did provide a comment letter in opposition, stating that they did not have the staff to respond to calls in this area. We have since reached out to the Adams County Sheriff Department, and they provided a no comment letter on this request. And then Mile High Flood District also had some initial concerns as the applicant was originally proposing to provide some trees along the Jim Baker Trail. Adams County does own the Jim Baker Trail. However, we have a deed restriction with Mile High Flood District that they maintain the drainage way, and they had some concerns over tree roots along the drainage way, and the applicant has since removed those trees along the Jim Baker Trail to be in compliance with Mile High Flood District. So this case was heard at the Planning Commission on April 28th. The Planning Commission recommended approval 6-1 with 24 findings of fact, 4 conditions, and 12 notes to the applicant. The applicant spoke at the meeting, had no concerns with the staff report or the presentation. There was one member of the public there to speak in opposition due to the height of the buildings and then concerns over the parking that was provided. And then the Planning Commission had some concerns over density, the number of parking spaces provided, and then the height of the proposed buildings. The Planning Commission did add a condition to this case that would require the applicant to follow the Adams County requirements for parking. So for a PUD, the applicant is not required to meet Adams County standards. They can propose their own, but the Planning Commission did condition this case, and the condition reads that guest parking shall be added to meet the Adams County development standards and regulations for a 2-family dwelling. And the applicant has requested the continuance to consider the Planning Commission condition. So the continuance that was requested previously allowed the applicant some time to consider that condition and how it would affect their site plan. So this site plan is a revised site plan that has been provided by the applicant. This site plan, they lose 4 units and add in additional parking to show compliance with that Planning Commission recommendation. So that's why this case was originally continued to this date, so the applicant had time to see how that condition would impact their site plan, and they were able to make it work. This site plan could be approved through a minor amendment at the time of final development plan. But the applicant did want today to show that they are willing to listen to the Planning Commission recommendations for concerns over parking, and that they have reconsidered their site plan and can make it work by losing a couple units. So staff today recommends approval of the subject request with 25 findings of fact, 4 conditions, and 12 notes to the applicant. And I do have the findings of fact, conditions, and notes on slides if the board would like to see them. But that does conclude my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Great, thank you, Layla. So next we have questions from the board. Okay, not seeing any questions from the board. Is the applicant present, and would you like to come down and make a presentation?
Commissioner Baca, staff did want to make one amendment on the record, if that would be permissible.
Sure.
Yeah. Good morning, Commissioners. Christy Fitch with the County Attorney's Office. In reviewing the condition as presented, that was presented by the Planning Commission, the intent of the condition is to ensure that there's one additional guest parking, or one guest parking space provided for every 2 units. So I would just request that we amend that, as the condition is written seems that they can only have the 2 garage spaces. So I just want to make sure that the intent of the Planning Commission is met with that 1 space for every 2 garage units.
I'm fine with that amendment.
Or every 2 dwelling units. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you're going to correct the language, is that what you're asking?
Yes, I will have that corrected after the applicant's presentation.
Okay, terrific, thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm David Klock with the True Life Companies, and as you will recall, our team was here in April for a residential project at 56th and Federal Boulevard. We were proud to be the first project rezoned to the Adams County TOD Zone District, and we look forward to finding more ways to work collaboratively with the county. As you can see by our presence here today, again, the True Life Companies is excited about the opportunity to work in Adams County. We respect the work that the staff and the Board of County Commissioners have done to plan for the future of Southwest Adams County. As you heard in Layla's presentation, the Planning Commission asked us to consider adding more visitor parking to our project. We asked for a continuance to analyze this condition. I want you to know up front that we have found a way to do that, as was shown. We plan to fully comply with the Planning Commission's recommendation. Our team will elaborate further in our presentation on that. Our team with us today includes Eva Mather from Norris, John Stafford with HKS Engineers, Kristen Sullivan with Foster Graham, and Doug Heaton with KTGY Architects. I'd like to ask Kristen Sullivan to come up now and walk through the rest of our presentation. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Commissioners. First of all, I want to start off by thanking the staff. We say this every time we're here, but it's because it's true. The staff has really been important in guiding a lot of the design of this project. They have high standards, as you know, and they have been very insightful in terms of what might work at the site and what the issues are to guide us through. So Layla especially, I just want to give a special recognition to her. They have scrutinized our project at every turn to the benefit of a better outcome at the end. You'll hear more. The Planning Commission also had some additional concerns about the parking, and we're going to show you how that plays out in terms of the site. It's a changing area. Transit is something I think we all believe in. We believe in the long-term future of these transit investments that were made in the region. This is an area that's had a particularly high level of public investment. And some of those investments have resulted in the private sector wanting to invest as well. And so I just wanted to use this context map to show kind of what's happening in the region and how this property really is in the center of a lot of those things, many of which you've worked on as a board or perhaps in earlier positions or on other boards that you serve on. And so a lot of those visions are coming together. And those things do take time to really see shifts in behavior and in terms of people taking transit, people taking their bike. And maybe we're not quite there yet today. And so I just want to let you know that although we are proximate to regional trails and a number of transit stations, we aren't asking for any reductions in terms of how our traffic is analyzed or how our parking is treated. And we didn't prepare a transit. There's a transit demand management option in the code to demonstrate that perhaps you might generate less parking need. We didn't even at the onset ask for that. And I think the clarification that Christy Fitch just made hopefully clears up any misunderstandings that you might have had in the staff presentation, because we were always meeting the parking code for two-family dwellings. The code requires 2 spaces per unit, which we always had. There's garages for every one of these units. And so the code also says, and the Planning Commission may require more. So you don't know until you go to the Planning Commission what the outcome will be of that conversation. And the Planning Commission very clearly wanted to require more. And so that's why we asked for the 60-day continuance, and we're here today to say, yes, there's fewer units, and there was time spent studying the economics of the project and whether this deal could still work with all the parties involved, because there are fewer units than there were at the beginning of our application. But the result is there's plenty of parking for visitors, and I'll show you that in detail here as we walk through. So just wanted to quickly highlight some of the things that I hinted at. Obviously, you're familiar with a lot of these things, but Clear Creek Valley Park is a major public investment. The Jim Baker Trail is a tremendous asset in the Jim Baker Reservoir. That Jim Baker Trail connects you to the Little Dry Creek Trail. There's been substantial public investment by both the county and the city of Westminster to make that park and drainage way a functional and beautiful park, as well as an entry into the transit station. There are 2 other transit stations that are proximate and also connected through the trail system. Adams County expanded Lowell Boulevard and put sidewalks on both sides, and there's pedestrian crossings through the RTD rail system. So all of that is kind of converging in this area, and there's a need, of course, for more housing in the region. And so that is why a property like this that has remained undeveloped for a long period of time is now ripe for a project like this. So that 10 years of planning with the community, and we're going to walk through some of the comprehensive planning that's led to projects like this coming forward, has resulted in some changes that have happened in the region. I just want to highlight something that you heard the staff say, but this property, though it's been undeveloped, and I think at times when a property is undeveloped for a very, very long time, it can be a surprise to neighbors when a development comes forward. It has always had zoning that allows development to occur. It just hasn't been the right time. And the property owner I think, has been patient and waited for some of these plans and investments in the region to really become more timely. And so I just wanted to highlight that there's currently commercial zoning on this property. And so the property owner is now exercising some property rights and asking for those to be slightly different than what's on the property today. But a combination of residential and commercial zoning has been in place for about 50 years on this property. Okay, so then I wanted to explain a little bit further about the comp plan designation as urban residential. And I just wanted to elaborate a little further. What does that mean? What does the term urban residential mean in the comprehensive plan? And you heard Layla describe that a little bit, and I wanted to give you the actual language from the adopted comprehensive plan. The use is single and multifamily housing. This is the most urban designation in the comp plan for residential development. It provides areas for a variety of housing types. And then further in the paragraph below, you'll see single and multiple family housing is repeated, and variety of housing types is repeated again. And so you'll see, and Layla's presentation elaborated upon, there is a variety in this area. And I think when that occurs, a PUD might be the most appropriate tool to ensure that when your comp plan gives pretty broad guidance about what variety means, the PUD can be a tool you can utilize in order to ensure you're getting quality design and appropriate levels of all of the different dimensional requirements of development. So further, I know that you're familiar with these plans, but there's a number of plans that have led to kind of the vision and now the implementation of that vision. The Southwest Adams County Framework Plan was kind of step one, and that talked a lot about quality of life in neighborhoods and infrastructure investment like curb, gutter, and sidewalk, walkable neighborhoods, and helping to ensure that people had those types of investments in their neighborhood that helped them be able to be the beneficiaries of living in Adams County. The Clear Creek Valley TOD plan was the initial vision for some of the changes in land uses that would happen with transportation investments. Making Connection is a more recent plan which ties infrastructure packages to encourage infill development and more private investment around transit stations. And that created that phrase, the triangle of opportunity between stations. And then in 2018, the county adopted a balanced housing plan. One of the portions of the balanced housing plan that I wanted to elaborate on is the better match between the demand for housing and the supply of housing in the county. And this term missing middle housing is utilized in a lot of conversations around this topic. And duplexes in this case fall right into this spectrum of housing, something in between detached single family and mid-rise or traditional multifamily that goes up pretty high in height. In the middle is that missing middle spectrum. And the balanced housing plan found that only 15% of the county's housing stock fit within that portion of the housing spectrum, and that there was a growing demand for it. And so this is kind of what creates some of the need and is supported by some of the plans that have been adopted for Adams County. So this is the original site plan that went to Planning Commission. I wanted to show it to you with this context of knowing what changes the applicant's willing to make. Let me just walk you through this a bit. So there are, of course, duplexes on this site. I wanted to give you a little bit of information about why duplexes were selected instead of another form of development like townhomes. The staff provided some pretty specific guidance on this topic. 2 units allows for that space between the buildings, and it makes it a bit more compatible as it transitions from the multifamily directly across the street to a single family residential neighborhood to the west. The duplexes have pitched roofs, which is compatible with the surrounding architecture, and it also allows for the pedestrian connectivity that you see through the site, which the staff emphasized is an important component of the PUD, to be able to walk within the site and be connected to the greater neighborhood, et cetera. So the initial proposal here, as you can see, had 2-car garages in every single unit, and then 30 visitor parking spaces. That was 2.25 parking spaces per unit, The parking spaces for visitors were located at the north end here, and then at the south end near the entrance. There was not parking spaces for visitors surrounding these internal blocks, and the Planning Commission was concerned about the distance one might have to walk from the visitor parking space to an individual unit that wasn't proximate to these spaces. So over the last several months, we've studied the ability to change that, and we've explored this in terms of, if approved, this is how the next submittal would look. So this is the preliminary development plan and preliminary plat. Those always require a second approval by this board. And so this condition would require that the final development plan and final plat reflect the Planning Commission's condition to add that visitor parking. The number of visitor parking spaces that's required by the Planning Commission's condition is an additional 30 parking spaces. So that was a substantial condition. It's the maximum that's allowed under the code for the Planning Commission to add, and we're able to do that. And so let me just show you what the revised site plan looks like. So those 4 units in total have been removed, and then the addition of 30 more visitor parking spaces occurs where this yellow circle is, where this yellow circle is, and then some additional spaces here. So the total number of visitor parking spaces in this revised site plan is 60, and that's still in addition to the 240 garage parking spaces for a total of 300 parking spaces to serve this development of 120 units, because we've reduced the number of units in addition to increasing the number of parking spaces. So I think we're really proud that we were able to get this done. To be honest, there are a lot of people involved in a project. And so this required coordination with a number of folks, and I just appreciate the opportunity that we had to study this over a couple of months so that we could confirm that it will work. So this is a summary just of those changes. I think we've covered parking and covered the decrease in housing units. We also needed to study that we could continue to meet the PUD requirements for open space, and we can. In fact, we were able to add some more trees in a couple of places, maintain the active open space. We'll walk you through what the open space plan looks like on this slide here now. So Layla covered this, but I just want you to know that active, functional, usable open space was a priority. And that is something that the staff held us to, and we wanted to make sure we could find ways to activate this open space that would meet the needs of a variety of residents. So there are, just briefly I'll point out, there's a playground for younger children, climbing boulders here in this middle courtyard. Obviously, there's the ability of parents to kind of oversee this open space or other residents. There's picnic areas and barbecue areas. There's cornhole lanes here. There's bocce courts up here along with a picnic area. The importance of the Jim Baker Trail was highly considered in the design. The units do front to the street to create kind of that urban environment. And there's a low open style kind of split rail fence to kind of match the character of the trail. And this shelter space is designed so that trail users too could use it. This would be available for public use as well. And there's a proposal concept to have some educational signage here that may relate to either the trail or to some of the practices, sustainability practices in water quality treatment related to the pond that's here. There was a lot of thought put into this site plan to design it in a way that provided people an opportunity to live in Adams County in these duplexes, but also tried to make sure that they had connectivity to the surrounding neighborhood and surrounding amenities, as well as on-site amenities to meet kind of their daily needs for recreation. Oops, sorry about that. We move on to the next one. I think we've covered parking in detail, but if you have any further questions, we just wanted to have an exhibit that just solely focused on parking, so I'll continue on here. Traffic can be a concern in a project like this. I want to let you know that the applicant prepared a traffic study. A full traffic impact statement was provided. Traffic impact study was provided. The staff at Adams County reviewed it and confirmed that the project can be accommodated with the existing transportation network. There's an additional review of this determination that occurs with final plat. So there is an opportunity for the staff to once again confirm that that's the case, but that is the finding after the review of the traffic study. We have renderings here so you can see how the architecture relates to the surrounding area. I do want to, during these, have a short discussion about height. You heard a lot from the staff about height. One of the nuances that I think Layla hinted at, and we'd be happy to elaborate further, is that at the direction of working closely with the staff, we proposed a sort of simplified way to measure height. Our max height in the PUD is simply the highest point in the building. The code measures height in a different way. We're not using the code, we're using a PUD, and for simplicity and ease of administration, we proposed a max of 40 feet. The code for certain building types has different ways of measuring. So flat roofs is one way, angled roofs is another way, etc. If you were to measure our buildings under the code, they would not be 40 feet in height under the code. Happy to elaborate further on that, but I just wanted you to know that it was based on sort of simplicity and ease of administration. They're not 40 feet if you were to submit a building permit under, R3 zone district. They'd be measured in a different way. And these are angled roofs, which was selected in order to provide some additional compatibility with the single-family homes that also have angled roofs. So this is perspective number 1 from Lowell, looking towards the Jim Baker Trail and the front of the townhomes. So you can see they are 3 stories on this side. Well, there are 3 stories on both sides. I just mean to say there's a garage on the first floor. So the back elevation has the garage. That was part of how they became 3 stories, of course, is because the first floor is predominantly the garage space and the staircase. The main living spaces are on the second floor, and then bedrooms on the upper floor. And then perspective number 2 is an interior shot of that courtyard where the playground and some of the green space flex lawn areas are. And so the duplex buildings are oriented towards the courtyard in this perspective, as you can see. And this is from the sort of north side looking towards those bocce court lanes. And you can see the building facades with the sidewalk in front of them along the western side of the property. So finally, just wrapping up here, I just wanted to say that we have used the approval criteria to guide the way that we've handled a lot of the things in this project. We focused on consistency with the comprehensive plan, adequacy of water, sewer, and drainage. Those are the approval criteria that relate to the preliminary plat. The subdivision must achieve an adequate level of compatibility through various measures, including site planning, public facilities, infrastructure, and transitions to adjacent land uses. The waiver that you heard about from Layla is simply to ensure that those streets are private and don't have to be maintained by Adams County. They provide the necessary width and service for fire protection and will be maintained by a homeowners association as well as the open space. With that, we're happy to answer any questions. We appreciate the time. And if you'd like a further discussion of the height point that I raised, our architect is here and can answer those questions for you in detail.
Great.
So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kristen. So before we get to questions from the board, we're going to take a quick break. So let's take about a 10-minute break, and then we'll be back. Okay, thank you, Erica. If we can reconvene. So we're at the point, this is the Clear Creek Valley, 6501 Lowell Boulevard land use case hearing, and then we are now at Board of County Commissioners questions for the applicant. So we have questions for the applicant at this point? Great job, Kristen. I'm not seeing any for the time being, so I'm going to move on to public comment. So Erica, do you have anyone sign up for public comment?
We do have 2 people signed
Okay.
up. The first person is Mark Madison.
Good morning. Could
Good.
state your name for the record, please?
Yeah, it's Mark Matson, 6434 Newton Street, and we spoke to you guys a few weeks back. Basically, the objections are still the same. The height, the overall height of the project, reaching that 40 feet limit, I talked about that before. Having that solid wall of homes or townhomes behind us, the fact that that 3rd story is going to look right into our backyard, none of that's changed. What I did want to bring up is at Berkeley Shores, they did some single-family homes. I believe they're a single-level ranch-style homes on the south end of their project. The gentleman, or excuse me, someone mentioned that there's different elevations that they've looked at. I know that's a brick siding or a stucco or what have you. What I'd like to see is a change in elevation next to our fence line to see if they could possibly bring something in that would have single-family homes or even a 2-story home along the back fence line. The other concern that I haven't heard that's been made clear is how close those townhomes will be to our fence line. Because I hear 5 feet to the sidewalk or 8 feet to the street. How close are they actually going to be to our fence line? And the other thing, there was a PUD that was marked on one of the graphics that said that Crystal Lakes was a PUD. Crystal Lakes is all single-family homes, so it's not a PUD. The only PUD that I'm aware of would be Baker and Berkeley Shores. And that would, so I'm a little confused as to how Crystal Lakes was marked as a PUD. The final thing, we know that they've adjusted the parking. We appreciate that. Now we just need that back row of homes against ours. That's going to be just something that is going to change our life forever. And to say that it's harmonious and compatible, to who? Not to us. Not when we're looking out at a 40-foot wall behind our house. So I know it's a nice sounding term for the presentation, but reality doesn't give us that. So I've said it before. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Mr. Madison. Erica?
Is it Joan?
Jan.
Jan.
Hello, my name is Jan Forderell. Mark Matson's husband lives at the same address. I have the same concerns as my husband. We would like to see the height of this project brought down to 32 feet out of respect to the neighbors to the west who've lived there for over 20 years. We do not want this 40-foot wall behind our house that's looking into our homes, our backyards, and the entire neighborhood. Out of respect to the people that have lived there, we really are asking that you take this into consideration. This height is obtrusive to the neighbors to the west. And my husband is correct that no comments have been made about how close this project is going to be to our fence to the east. And what we're also proposing is that not deciduous trees, but fully mature pine trees be installed from the south end to the north end on that fence line to the east, so that we do have some privacy along with the height of this project to be brought down. We know that this can work, and Commissioner Pinter, you mentioned on the last hearing that it was negligible. Well, I take personal offense to that, and so does our neighbors. It is not negligible to the people that have to live behind it when you've got people looking into your yards. And the question I'm going to propose to you is, do you have a 40-foot structure behind your home? It was highly offensive. And that needs to be considered. Please, try to consider, if you were one of the people that lived in these houses, would you like a 40-foot structure behind your house to create a wall when you've lived there over 40 years and not had that? Please respect the fact that we need our privacy, and we want our privacy, and for the progress of Adams County, other people shouldn't have to suffer for the progression of Adams County. Commissioner Tedesco, you said on the last hearing that there has been that there is planning made for infrastructure, for roads. Well, we live there, and we know how congested that is. We have not heard any proposed ideas when this will start, when the proposed infrastructure for traffic is going to begin. We've lived there over 20 years and seen nothing, not one thing. So I'm asking you, what is going to happen with the proposed infrastructure, and when is it going to start?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the next item on our process, excuse me, is the Board of County Commissioners discussion. So there were a couple questions by the applicant, or by the public, but let's go ahead and start with the board for discussion. Commissioner Odorizio.
Yeah, I have a question. Can staff address the issue of what infrastructure improvements are expected in the area from either the CIP or otherwise in the next maybe 5 to 10 years? Let's clarify this setbacks while we're in this hearing. And then the third one is more of a question for the applicant. What would it take to, what would be the, first of all, I'll ask the question, what would it take to move it to a two-story instead of three-story just along the neighborhood to the west? I would like to also thank the applicant for working really hard on the parking issue, because that is an issue. And like it or not, we are we're very proud of our blue-collar roots and having a working community. The people in Adams County get up every day, they fill their lunch pail, grab a tool belt, and get in a truck, and they drive. A lot of us. And they do a lot of work out in the community. So people in that moved to Adams County tend to have more than just one vehicle. And so I appreciate you guys making that accommodation. And then the other, so there's two things for this staff. That's the setbacks and the infrastructure. And then the two things for the applicant are modification of the height in those areas along those. And then also, how much are we expecting each unit to cost? Did we already say that? So.
That was a lot. Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll address the infrastructure question first. I can have Eden Steele, our development review engineer, come up and talk about potential public improvements.
Hello, Eden Steele. So after conversations with Public Works, it's my understanding that 64th Avenue is built out in this area to its foreseeable capacity. So it's not going to undergo a CIP project, and then, or, in the next, 5 to 10 years, it's not on any plan. As for Lowell Boulevard, it's also my understanding that that's built out. It's constrained by that major drainage way along the west side, so it can't expand in that direction. And then through the traffic impact study submitted by the applicants, there is an acceptable level of service at the intersection, meaning there's not excessive wait times to get through the signal. Also, the addition of the traffic that they're adding wasn't bumping it into, a category that we wouldn't accept. It actually wasn't impacting traffic that much. It certainly wouldn't impact traffic as much as a commercial development on that corner. So let me know if you want additional elaboration on that.
So before you leave, can you go over the Lowell improvement project and what we've done and how that's impacted the area?
I would need to check to see the exact limits of where that Lowell project is. I know that there was some expansion, but if you wouldn't mind if I take a moment just to understand the limits of that.
And that's what I was referring to, and that was not even mentioned, so.
Okay,
You know,
yes, there was a recent.
Transitions across the railroad tracks and.
Yes, there were a number of improvements made to Lowell Street, and that was a CIP project that, has just recently been wrapping up. And that, I believe there was some expansion and then also pedestrian facilities added. I don't think it included this particular segment, but I think that's because the segment's already been improved. But again, I can just confirm quickly if you want to know the exact limits of that recent project. Okay.
We know where it is. We know what's been done. So it's nothing to the north of 64th where this project would be. Nothing. Yeah, it's all south.
Right, and I do believe that some of those improvements to Lowell Street were made back to that Mile High Flood District tract and the improvements of that major drainage way. That was a transfer that happened from Mile High Flood District to the county, so there were some improvements, I believe, to Lowell Street with that major drainage way, but that wasn't in my tenure with the county, so I'd have to, again, do more research on that if you'd like background.
I don't need any additional background. I think the public's, they seem satisfied at this point and are aware of the improvements that were made. It just does not look like it was in this segment. Is that a fair statement? Okay. Commissioner, what were your other questions? The setbacks. So does the applicant want to talk to the setbacks? On the west side, I believe, as well.
Yeah, so I'm going to have Eva Mather come up from Norris to give you the details on that. The setback along the west line does vary a bit from north to south. So she'll, if we could, possibly a site plan might help. I don't know if you'd like a site plan to elaborate upon that. And then while we're up here, if you'd like, we could also answer, Commissioner Odoricio, I believe, asked a question for the applicant regarding height and two-story and the implications of something like that along the western edge. So go ahead, Eva.
Hi, Eva Mather, Norris Design, 1101 Bannock Street, Denver, Colorado, 80204, for the record. Thank you, Commissioners. The setback does vary along this edge from approximately, and I would call it a buffer, so between the property line and the edge of our lot lines, there is a pinch point in this location of approximately 5 feet, but it grows along this edge up to approximately 16 to 18 feet. And so that's the buffer, but the buildings within those lot lines are 8 feet from the property line. So the porches are a little closer, but the structure itself would be 8, so 13 to maybe 26 feet at the greatest on the south side.
I guess I don't understand the map. So you're saying that that's a sidewalk that's there? So the front of these properties would face the
face
buffer.
west, that's right.
And so
Explain. Let me just add
'cause
one.
you showed the fronts facing Lowell, but not the other way.
These are the ones that face the residential neighborhood here. And we're platting, so each of these buildings will be on its own lot. So there's a buffer that Eva just described, and then we also were discussing the edge of the lot line, correct? So there's sort of two different ways of measuring, from the outer edge of the property and then from the actual lot line itself.
So with the 5-foot pinch point, does that include both?
So that 5 feet is that's a buffer from the property line to the lot line. And then the structure is set back from the lot line in that location.
How far is it set back?
So the structure is 8 feet, and then the porch encroaches 3 to 5. So So the porch,
But is there building on top of the porch, or is the porch separate out front?
the porch projects out, and the building itself is 8 feet
From the property line?
from the property line,
And then an
from the
additional
lot
5.
line.
And there's another buffer that's
Yep.
in a tract.
So there's, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit here. Like there, so a home sits on a lot, and with, we did go through the setbacks for these lots. So each lot has an 8-foot front setback, and then the porch can project out into that setback. And the, up 3 to 5 feet, I think, is our plans for those porches. And so, but the building itself, as you can see, will remain the 8 feet from the lot line. So, so the building itself is 8 feet from the lot line. So 8 plus the buffer. So here's the sidewalk, and that buffer grows along this edge. And we will provide plant material, and we have proposed a 6-foot fence along that edge as well.
Okay, so can you, just for point of clarification, I understand that the buffer expands as you move down the block. So can you talk about from the property line of the residents, that's the buffer, that's going to vary. And then how wide is the sidewalk there?
Yeah, the sidewalk's in that tract, which we're also calling a buffer. So it's how long? 4 feet. 4 feet is the sidewalk width.
Okay. And then we have 8 feet, then it's the building structure itself. Is that?
So then on the opposite side of the sidewalk, I'm going to use this to point.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we may in just a second. So then the newly created lot lines start on this side of the sidewalk. And so you'll see that on the plat, which we can pull up in a moment. It was in the staff's presentation. Then that lot line also has a building setback, and that's the one that Eva's described. It's 8 feet from the lot line, and the porch can project into that setback. And so hopefully that helps clarify. It's setbacks for new lots that have not yet been created. So we just wanted to make sure it's clear that we have a tract, and then we also have these new lots. So that, I think this image does help kind of demonstrate what we're describing here. If you scroll to the next one, maybe I do that here. So this whole area, as you move along, is that buffer or tract, and then this is the newly created lot lines, and then there's a building setback from that lot line. So
Okay, any other
building-
questions from the board? Steve?
Yeah. Cost and what would it take to reduce the height on some of these buildings? Current cost estimates.
No, I think those questions are actually probably related. So the applicant's happy to come up and discuss the anticipated price point. Of course, we're just at preliminary plat, so I think we're always a little guarded, but they are willing to share kind of what our thoughts are at this point. We'll go on to final plat and final development plan if approved today, and the market, of course, is changing dynamically at all times. But David, please come forward. You go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, so as Kristen alluded, we're several years out from completion of construction, so it's obviously hard to gauge where the market will be at that point in time, but we're underwriting these homes to be around the mid-500s.
And then I think the answer to your question about reducing it down to 2 stories is that would be very, very challenging, in large part because of some of the reasons that I described earlier. These homes have a 2-car garage as the first floor. And so if they were to be only 2 stories, there's not very much living space in one more story above that. And makes it difficult to find buyers that would be able to live with that little living space and for the amount of purchase price. We also wanted, if possible, to further explain the height issue. If you're interested, our architect's available and ready for that.
So as far as the cost goes, if you were to reduce the height of those properties along the neighborhood to the west and make those the last ones you build, by the time you get to them, you're probably talking about the same price point, right? If you're doing this as an iteration, because I've seen a lot of these subdivisions go up, and they're paying, that are at the end of the process are paying just as much as the people at the beginning of the process for a reduced house.
You know, that is possible, but we haven't gotten into how this will phase and how it'll construct.
Right.
We typically like to build as quickly as possible. So, you know, depending upon crew size and everything that'll come into play in the future. But the other component to the two-story is, as Kristen was alluding, if you have your two living levels above your parking, you take one out. Now you have a garage with one level of living. That would require the building to change dramatically in as far as width or as depth, so that you could have enough on the back side of the garage for some living space, and then an upstairs. And I just point that out because that would be a major rechange that we would have to study that. I couldn't tell you right now if that's possible or not, but it's a dramatic enough change that it would require some additional review and study.
And I'll be done after that. Even if it meant that those particular units were one garage for one car, but then we're opening another can.
Then
on
we're
the other
going.
issues.
Yes, correct.
I
right.
understand. All right, thank you. Those
Thank
are
you.
my questions right now.
Commissioner Pinter. Thank you, applicant.
Okay, so I had a couple of questions from the members of the public, and they're particularly around I'm trying to find the stuff that's different than what Commissioner Odoricio already covered. The type of tree. So let's talk about landscaping and the type of tree. There was a request for full year foliage. Probably they had mentioned pine trees, but I would imagine some kind of shrubbery pine tree combination. I am just curious if any commentary can be provided on this request for privacy, because it does relate to height, and I accept the criticism from our neighbors here who came out, but my comment is about the 32 versus 40, and I'm trying to get to like how 40 is so much worse than 32, and what can we do to bridge that gap. So I apologize, I'm not saying that the existence of a previously vacant lot becoming a subdivision that's not negligible, but 32 to 40, that's what we're trying to zero in on. And that was your request, and so we're trying to get to the bottom of it. So part of that is about privacy and screening and full year trees versus seasonal trees. I myself have a seasonal mountain view, given the types of trees that I have, so I understand the request.
So, hi, I think a couple of us are going to come up to answer this, but I think in general, trees are something we're absolutely willing to work with the county to find the right places for them, to provide some additional screening. I think you'll see, it's hard to see at this scale on a PowerPoint presentation, but there are a lot of trees already in that buffer area. I think that was something that the staff really wanted us to study. You know, it's something we can look into further, absolutely. Like I mentioned, with the resubmittal with the FDP, the staff could continue to look at additional screening options, including year-round evergreen trees. The buffer is at its widest here, and you can see the concentration of trees in this area. That's one of the optimal places for them, and there's quite a few in there already. But looking at swapping them out for a different species is something that we're absolutely amenable to.
Yeah, and I understand this is a graphic, so you just probably put like tree into the graphic program and then dropped one. I would be interested if y'all could chat about evergreen screening trees and or shrubberies and the combination. So I don't know what needs to happen to have that foliage, landscaping, screening conversation. I hear you verbally saying, yes, we're open to talking about types of trees, but just want to make sure that that gets, if that is something you're open to, that gets written down somewhere to address this concern around privacy and screening.
Sure. We'd be happy to discuss a condition of approval with the staff regarding additional trees. This will come back again before you in the future. And so with the staff's direction, we can discuss a condition around working through this. And/or I don't know if the staff thinks there's anything that they would recommend today in terms of tree species, but I would suggest having more time outside of a public hearing to identify appropriate species to make sure that we're selecting them in ways that meet the objective that's been kind of set out here today.
I appreciate that. And I think that the reason this becomes an issue in these sorts of discussions is because 32 feet is already really tall. And so, like, how do we get to some privacy? And this is just something that we're addressing as a society as we move from homes that are really far apart to homes that are close together with a shared courtyard. These concepts of window placement and screening end up being really important for people to have that sense of privacy, as they're also seeking low yard maintenance or low yard work and favoring the courtyard design. So that's my question. So I hear a commitment and I see a bunch of nodding, so I don't know if anything else needs to happen on evergreen versus deciduous. Yes, okay.
Yes, I just want to be clear in setting expectations. So we're talking about a relatively narrow landscape buffer strip with a sidewalk.
Yep.
And the form of deciduous trees, which allow you to go up and form a canopy under which people can walk, is quite different in form than an evergreen species, which is wider at the bottom. So what we will certainly work with the applicant to figure out what privacy screening we can make work, but I do want to clarify that expectation.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, Jenny. And you're right. There was also a question, and I don't know if it's negligible, but given that the folks came out to ask, this Crystal Lake PUD conversation, I think that was part of the staff presentation. It's my understanding that planned use development PUD can be any type of built form structure. I just want to see some nodding and see if there was something incorrect on the zoning map or if that was accurate.
So that is correct. PUDs can be any form of residential, whether it be single family or apartments such as Baker School apartments. We also have commercial and industrial PUDs in the county. So it is a PUD even if it is single family residential development.
Okay. All right. And duplexes are generally considered a single family occupancy as well, right?
It's typically considered single family attached, yes.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, staff. Commissioner Tedesco.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to address a few things. One, I'm very glad that you brought up the tree species, especially with the issues, especially like evergreens, because of the width at the base of those evergreens. And I didn't hear from the constituent as to what they considered a fully mature tree that they wanted to put in and what that height was. What gap are you trying to cover with that tree? The fence is 6 foot, so I'm trying to figure out what you're suggesting in a height in a initial plant. So I just wanted to get that answer from her if I could, and then I have some other questions after that.
My husband and I have done a lot of research on pine trees in Colorado and what are the best ones for our weather conditions, and we've planted them, and a reasonable height to us would be a minimum of 20 feet, 20, 30, 40, 50, and the best, one of the best pine trees for Colorado is called a Bosnian pine. We have got them planted in our yards. They're excellent for our weather conditions. They're much, much better than an Austrian pine because of the root system. The root system goes straight down. They can be manicured at the bottom so they're not so wide.
I apologize. I don't mean to cut you off. I don't know that I'm the right person to be talking about which species is the right species. I asked what the appropriate height you were suggesting was.
Okay.
Yeah, and just very quickly, another tree is a Spartan.
So I don't need to know the trees.
And what
I just need to know what you're suggesting at a height.
Would be at least a 6 or 8 foot tree. would be the start. And the Spartan juniper grows more upright, so you don't need that vast width that traditional pine trees will do.
Right.
Something
But you're-
so I think
And I apologize, I can handle this, but my question was just the height, and I think that you've answered that for me, and I appreciate that. That's all I had for you.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing that I do want to say, you can go sit down.
Okay.
It's fine. The other thing that I do want to say is I do live with a 40-plus structure behind my house. I think that, there are some ups and downs to that. One, that I think that it does improve the security of my house because I have a neighbor watching my house at all times. Others is I may have a neighbor at one time that I don't approve of or I don't like, but, I do still have somebody behind my house. I do want to say that, this property is owned by somebody who you've been very blessed over 20 years to have him sit on this property with no development. But it is his property, and he does have the right to develop it in his timeline. Whether he developed it the year after you moved in, or the year before you moved in, or 20 years before you moved in, or 20 years after you moved in, is his choice. But that development is his choice and how he wants to develop that. I apologize if some of this interferes with your expectation of what this is, but it is a right of owning land to be able to develop that land. That being said, and I know I'm saying things that you probably won't like or may criticize me for saying, but the fact of the matter is that this meets our standards. It meets what we require in Adams County on a uniform basis to have building happen in our community. And we try to be very cognizant of making that equal across the board, regardless of where you're building. And we try to take into account the needs of our communities around. Your community came in, this community will come in, other communities will come in, and we'll deal with the infrastructure as the usage of those roads grows. Hopefully we have more transit options that reduces that. But there's a high need and a high profitability right now for housing. And so that's probably why you're seeing this landowner jump on that opportunity to get it done at this time. I'm not seeing anything that has been brought forward by anyone that leads me to have a concern about what's being built here. I think that it's appropriate to the area. I think that it matches the neighborhood, and it is a benefit to our total constituency in that area. There's going to be other development because there's open spaces around that in that four-corner area along 64th and Lowell. And I hope that somebody comes through with something beneficial to the community such as this. I will tell you that I absolutely think that the idea that we have a talk about trees and species of trees, I don't know that that needs to happen. There's a 6-foot fence. They are putting in trees. Whether it needs to be a wall, whether you're looking at a wall of trees or you're looking at a 40-foot structure, I mean, this area is a pathway and a corridor. You're going to get all kinds of people walking up and down that pathway. I personally would rather have eyes on both sides to know what's going on and to monitor it than I would to have a bunch of trees and maybe places for people to hide out and do things that we don't want them to be doing. So it's a personal preference for me. I just wanted you to know where I stand. I totally respect your views. You live in that area. But this is across the board, I think, contiguous to what we're doing for building in our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I'm going to go next. So to the applicant, I know this came before the board before. I want to have my positives up front. I'm a big supporter of open space and parks. ties to trail connection, walkability of neighborhoods, and I appreciate what you've incorporated. I know it's required. I just appreciate it. That's a quality of life issue for our residents and surrounding residents. So I know that one of those amenities is accessible to the public. So I just want to put my appreciation out there for that first. Secondly, I do concur with Commissioner Tedesco. While very difficult, property owners have rights on what they do with their property, what is built on there, the zoning, et cetera, that the county has put into place. This is a development that does fit that, and I think harmonious and compatible with the neighborhood is, we're not talking about the fence line. We're talking about when we look at the overall, the bird's eye view of a half-mile radius or surrounding communities, and I think that was the graphic, and we don't have to go to the graphic. When they do the graphic of R1, R2, and those, how it's laid out of those neighborhoods that are identified, this certainly falls into something as compatible with the neighborhood. So I cannot argue that it is not compatible. It is when you look at the overall feeling of that neighborhood and looking out again at a bird's eye view. As far as the height requirement, I think that there's some confusion. I don't know if today's hearing has resolved that. We have a PUD in place, the R2. How is staff looking at measuring? How is the applicant looking at measuring that? I understand the reasoning, the methodology of the maximum height at the peak, and I think that that's probably very consistent rather than looking at the pitch of the roof and so on and so forth. I think the request of the applicant, and I heard my colleague mention, and I know that this would be very difficult if you were to try to make that a two-story, a two-car garage with one level of living space and bedrooms. I don't think that that's, as a constituent, I'm not sure. As a resident, I would pay $500,000 for, you didn't say what square footage that would be. That's a lot. I mean, I don't think we can make that accommodation, and I don't think that, I think that would be a burden on the applicant, quite honestly. For the residents that testified today, it's hard. I grew up in Brighton, still live in Brighton. There's a development that's going into the south of me. It's going to be 1,700 homes. It has been farmland my entire life, and it is a shock to the system. And I'm not sure a forest of trees with a 40-foot buffer is going to satisfy. It would not satisfy. It's not satisfying me, and I am a half a mile away from this development. There's a 2-lane road in between me and this development, and it is a shock to the system that when you live next to open space, and I don't mean that in the terminology how we have it defined here in Adams County, but when you live next to open space, we see this in Westminster. We see it in all of our communities, quite honestly. Thornton is facing this. Bennett is facing this as well. But there is a need for housing. And I have to say that there's a need for all types of housing. And your particular housing development that's going in your neighborhood, this is full market housing. There's a need for that as well. There's a need for workforce housing. There's a need for affordable housing. So I think a buyer attracting $500,000, I think that that's the going rate right now is $500,000 for, we're talking a duplex. So I live in a patio home, and I never thought in my lifetime it would ever pitch over $500,000, and that's what the market is doing right now to us. And I agree with the applicant, and thank you for sharing that. And in 2 years, I don't know where housing costs will be. I think that I'm not anticipating housing to go down. Having grown up being the second generation resident in Adams County, seeing the market in a post-COVID world where people can buy, investors can buy and live and work in another state remotely, I just don't see the cost of housing going down. So My only request to the applicant, you proposed, and we don't need to go through the elevations. Elevations include material, the height of the building. If there is a way that you can put along the west portion of your development a lower elevation, I would appreciate that. I think that when we're talking about a reduction in 8 feet, from 40 feet to 32 feet, I don't know, I'm not a designer, I'm not an architect, I don't know what that looks like. At any cost, it's a 3-story building, and I'm not sure taking 8 feet off of that is going to change the view if you're sitting on your patio. I'm not sure I would be able to sit on my own patio and say my neighbor's house is 8 feet shorter than the next neighbor's house. I just cannot make that determination. A house is a house to me when I'm sitting on my patio. I don't get a view of the mountains. I live in a patio home community, so I approve of this development. I want to thank the applicant for considering and incorporating the additional parking spaces. I know garage parking does count towards your development, but adding the visitor parking, I know I get visitors at my house and they all have to park on the street. So I just appreciate that. I know it was reduction of 4 units. That doesn't go lightly on me. I know when it looks at dollars and cents, I do appreciate the additional parking that you've incorporated for guests and visitors. So I do have one more commissioner, and then I'll ask for final comments, and then we'll go to a vote. So Commissioner Odoricio.
I have a question for my colleagues. Do I have the support if we wanted to do a continuation to allow the developer to see if they have any ideas on the elevation issue on the western side? And then depending on what I hear from you, then if the answer is no, let's move on. Then at least I know I gave that opportunity because the developer did say that he'd need more time to think through it. The other thing is I also wouldn't mind seeing the developer. I don't know if we can put this in as a condition, and I don't know if I would support it, but you know, other things they could look at to get creative is the trees don't always have to be on this side. Maybe you offer trees to the neighbors too, if the neighbor maybe wants trees in their yard as well. Engineering, are there ways to engineer the windows and such so you can reduce some of the privacy concerns from the viewing side? These are all kind of out of the box thinking, but, and then if there's a ways to, if you did do some sort of reduction that did equate to a change of square footage, the timing thing that I talked about, make those the last ones to be developed, gives you a little bit time, because I honestly believe these things are going to go between $600,000 and $700,000 by the time they're built, and I'd be willing to bet a 6-pack of beer to anybody out here that that's what will happen at the end of the day. But because of that high price, I also want to acknowledge that the developer, when you take out 4 units, assuming they're $500,000, he's already cut $2 million in to address the parking. I want to thank you. If it's as high as I believe it will be, $600,000 to $700,000 at a minimum, you're talking about $2.5 up to $3 million of a reduction, and that's even that much more commendable to address a major issue, which I think the parking was. So I want to thank you for that. The question I have on the table is for my colleagues, if you want to give them more time. And then the other comments were just kind of throwing out some brainstorming ideas. Thank you.
So I have one more before we get to your question. Commissioner Tedesco.
No, I'll go ahead and answer the question. No, I wouldn't support that. I believe that we've already asked the developer to come back with an issue that I think they've been more than responsive to. And this wasn't something that we had asked them to come back at the same time with. Continually coming back and saying, can you go out there and redo it again and again and again and again every time that they come in and we hear more information, I think is disingenuous to the process that we're in. So no, I would not support that. I do believe that they've done their due diligence and they've done everything they can to accommodate the asks that we had at the time, because this is their comeback on this. I don't believe, because if it was housing that had more property associated to it, I think they could probably accommodate that, or they would have accommodated that. This is garage parking, so there is no driveway, so you're sharing a common drive. So once you lower that building, you severely restrict what that building can be and what that means to the overall success and manageability and bonding of this property. And I don't believe that if they could have done that in the first place, they would be able to do that with that amount of reduction. I'm in support of what they're doing because they have met all the criteria that we have asked for them, and they have taken it back, readjusted, and met what we asked in the last meeting. And to send them back to do it all over again, I think is disingenuous, and I wouldn't agree to that.
So I'm going to jump in here before I get back to you, Commissioner Doricio, because I see you have also weighed in. To your question, I would not consider a continuation for the developer to ask for that, and I'll tell you why. Their development meets the PUD. They've also considered the request for additional guest parking. So, and you're right, it is a $2 million hit that they probably will take. And then I think the process doesn't allow for us to make that consideration at this point. And I think if we were to consider it and it were to pass, it would set a terrible precedent of undermining our zoning regulations that we have in place. I mean, there's a process established. There's an opportunity for the public to make comment and other stakeholders, mile high flood, fire, et cetera. The applicant, we need to have, because what we hear as well is, what I hear from applicants and developers is that they want a simplified and they want a predictable process. And I think that taking a continuation at this point would make this unpredictable, and I think it would be an unfair request. My ask of the applicant is that if they have in their power to reduce the height along that fence line, if their elevations allow for it, that those elevations be placed there. But I'm going to allow the developer, that is their lane, that is not my lane as a commissioner, because they do meet the standard. So that's where I stand right now. So back to you, and then Commissioner Pincher.
Okay, with that said, I don't have the support for a continuation, and I appreciate the comments. I think I might not have been here for the first case, or something inside me makes me feel like this doesn't, to me it feels like a lot of these discussions are new. If I was here, then I just simply don't recall. I will tell you this, I appreciate all the concessions that have been made. I appreciate all the parking concessions, the hit. If you could try to, I would echo the comments of the chair, Lynn Baca, who said, please continue working with the neighbors as best you can to reduce the issues. I will also tell the neighbors, I'm surprised as hell that this is not a 400 or 600 unit apartment complex being proposed at this corner. And so I think, to be honest with you, that these are duplexes. There are neighborhoods all across Adams County that are aware that we are not afraid of density, and I honestly believe that duplexes here are not as much of the highest density and potential impact that I honestly, if you would have asked me 2 years ago what would likely go in here, I would have suspected a Baker type apartments filling every corner, every inch of this, and I think that I feel in good faith that a lot of people have paid attention to the neighbors, and that's why they're proposing duplexes instead of 400, 600, 800 units in an apartment. So you guys have done outstanding work as neighbors, getting the concessions, getting the design that you've gotten. I'm going to support this, and I'm going to own it, but I also want you to know how much I appreciate what your advocacy has done to address your concerns. And I think you've been highly successful, and it may not feel that way at the end if this goes through, but I'm going to tell you right now, there are neighborhoods all across this metro area that would love to have reduced something to a duplexes next to them instead of 4, 5, 6, 7-story apartments. So thank you.
Commissioner Pincher.
Yeah, and if there's no other comments, I'll make the motion at the end of my comment. I really appreciate y'all coming out from the public. The bottom line is, and I think that the applicants know this, that 32 feet is really tall. And when you're talking about 5 feet plus 8 feet, that one pinch point in particular, I have a lot of concern. And as was articulated by my colleagues on both sides, property rights are property rights. Somebody was going to develop this at some point. The fact that this is going to be single-family attached homes with a central courtyard and a playground and family-friendly and designed for human families to move into and not commercial as it's been zoned for ages, actually could be really harmonious. I know that word grates with community, because you are a residential community next to Westminster High School, next to big parks. And so this is residential homes with big parks as well. I ask that the applicant work diligently because, you know, if you are able to come down to that lower elevation, closer, especially at the pinch points, that would be great. And it would show a lot of good faith, but at a minimum, the privacy screening is really important because either way, 32 feet is really tall, and 40 feet doesn't feel that much bigger, but privacy screening is important, sort of my summary comment. And I would encourage you to work on that. That being said, if there isn't anyone else, I would make a motion to approve.
And no other commissioners that would like to speak at this point.
Okay, I move to approve PRC 2021-2 Clear Creek Valley with 24 findings, 4 conditions, and 12 notes to the applicant.
And Chair Baca, if I may read into the record that condition that was corrected.
Yes, thank you, Christy.
So as part of condition 4, sorry, it's way up. It will say state instead of what it currently states, or states exactly what's on the screen right there. The applicant shall provide a minimum of 1 space for every 2 units for visitor parking, which they have demonstrated that they have shown.
Thank you, Ms. Fitch. I realized that I was reading the top line as opposed to the bottom line, which is 25 findings of fact, 4 conditions, and 12 notes to applicant with the revised condition. So thank you for that.
Second.
And the motion passes 4-0.
Thank you very much.
Okay. With no other items on our agenda, we are adjourned today at 12:27 p.m.